Hello, Clayton Vance here again, licensed architect, and want to be do-gooder in the world, trying to make the world a more beautiful place. What we're going to talk about today still is we're on our stone journey of exploration, trying to figure out why the stuff that we get today just does not look as authentic and real as the stuff that was produced and made and created 100 years ago plus. And the real reason for it, we've already discussed it, but it has to do with the fact that walls are no longer load-bearing masonry walls. It's no longer a stone wall. It's a wall of some sort of variety, whether it be wood or steel or concrete or something, faced with a tiny thin veneer of stone. And we're going to call this episode, Hey 1970s, they want their fireplace back, because we're going to look at something from the Biltmore. Over by, there's a building over by the orangery in the garden, the rose garden, that is fascinating. And we're going to look at its stonework as it relates to 1970s walls, even though that was built over 100 years ago, and these 1970s walls were built in the 1970s. And just, we're going to look at the difference, because it's kind of apparent that this very random everything pattern derives from that kind of inspiration. But my gosh, I don't know. Wow, we lost the craft. Let's take a look at these online right now. Here's a couple walls. I'm sure a lot of you have grew up in houses with these walls or these fireplaces. I did. My mom's fireplace still looks like this, and that's not a problem unless you hate walls that look like this. But let's point out a couple things that we've been pointing out in this masonry series right from the get-go. If you want it to look authentic, number one, there have to be lintels and sills, and it has to be structurally correct. If there's no lintel, then what on earth is holding it up? For instance, if we look at this one right here, where's the giant lintel that should be here, holding up all the stone above it? It doesn't exist. And as it doesn't exist, we have this stone here, and this stone here, and this stone here. And what happens if this were an actual real load-bearing wall? That stone right there would fall out because it's not a keystone. There's a difference between a keystone and whatever that thing is, which is a nothing. A keystone actually, which I get what they're trying to do, but still, that joint should be over here. That joint's going in the right spot. And so, okay, I kind of get what you're doing, but the stones are far enough off that it's not working. It just is not working. Then this thing, that's supposed to be the random weird keystone with these other little things. All of these little things would just fall right through the hole. Fall down, fall down, fall down. They're just going to fall right through the hole, because that's what these stones would do in reality, because they're not load bearing. Let's look at where the inspiration for these types of things come from. Something like this. This is a crazy, freaky, awesome, cool wall and building. And that's real masonry right there. That's masonry. Not this and not this. That's a dude who found some flat stones in a riverbed and threw them up on the wall in whatever random pattern he thought would fit. That's someone who knows how to assemble stones. Let's look at this in a critical way to understand and figure out why it's so good and authentic. Okay, first, openings. What we've got on our opening is an arch, a real arch, with these giant impost blocks right here holding up the arch. And so here's your structure. I'm laying out your structure. We've got these stones that come down in this kind of coinish type of pattern on both sides to support everything above it. And then the arch is cut. It is very specifically cut stone. And if we look at where it all points right to that point. All of these joints go right to the center line of the arch. It's geometry at its finest. And geometry is the language of design. And it's what generates beauty. And so subconsciously what you're looking at is something huge here, and this arch, and that makes visual sense in the world of physics and also beauty. Okay, let's look at this other opening. Also got some random stones. Look at where his joint is relative to the other one we just pointed out. Look at the joint, totally different. And then he did a flat arch, which, if you take these down to the resolution of the joint, it still all goes to a center point of the arch, even though that arch in this case is flat, but it's still an arch. Pretty cool. Big giant lintels. Big giant lintels back here on these windows, embedded into the masonry, not right along the wall line where the opening would be, not right on the opening line, but embedded into the masonry. And so you can tell that this is an actual masonry wall. And honestly, if it wasn't an actual masonry wall, you can still accomplish the same thing visually, even if you have the thinner stones, if you know what you're doing and you actually apply the stone as if, in a manner as if it were load bearing. Now let's look at some of these other random weird joints, which is just really fascinating to me. Look how specifically and precisely each things have been cut. Those are tight joints, and they fit together like this intricate puzzle. And there is no way on earth these things are moving. They're really random weird shapes, but those random weird shapes are so perfectly cut and joined together that it visually works, because it's telling you this is a stone wall, and it is nothing but a stone wall. Let's pull up these 1970s fireplaces again. How tight are those joints? They aren't. Look at this. They've used all these random rubble things just to fill in the spaces because they were too lazy to actually cut all the pieces to fit together. This one almost fits, but it doesn't fit. That should have been tighter. That should have been tighter. That should have been tighter. But that's what most of us grew up with in the 1970s. And that's what we're used to, and we think that's acceptable. No, we don't. None of us think that's acceptable. Seriously, 1970s, what went wrong with you? Why was everything like virtually ugly? Fashion, I didn't say that, but we all feel that way who grew up then. You forced us to dress that way. It wasn't our choice. But this is just fascinating because it shows this difference, a very significant difference when people are trying to do masonry like this, that it doesn't work visually. It's ugly. It's terribly ugly. This stuff, not ugly. That is amazing because it has that craftsmanship behind it. And it's actually following the rules of physics and geometry. This is completely undisciplined masonry, which kind of reflects so many other things that we could talk about. So we're going to keep on this journey and keep looking at and exploring how things have gone awry and how we can get back to authentic and beautiful things. So keep watching, and we'll be back to compliment and criticize some other things. See you next time.